YouTube community, Beach Boys fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens. We're here today to talk about the Beach Boys' Smile, but the Sea of Tunes bootleg version from 2003. Sea of Tunes began releasing CDs in the late 90s, 1997 to be exact, putting out these amazing collections of unreleased recordings, alternate versions of Beach Boys songs from all of their records. As the story goes, everything that they had came from the An American Band movie from 1984. Apparently, these high quality transfers happened as they were making that movie, putting the soundtrack together, basically grabbing everything available from the Beach Boys at that point just to use for the movie and I guess maybe to have for other projects in the future, but they kind of laid around for a while. So by the time these CDs started coming out, this was already 15 years worth of work in the making. Specifically with this exact copy, this is kind of an offshoot of Sea of Tunes number 16. Apparently it's not exact, but it's very, very close. I want to go back in time a little bit because obviously, as we know, Smile was not completed back in the 60s. And the first bootlegs appeared in the late 70s, apparently because of Dennis Wilson giving out cassettes. That's just a rumor. The second theory about these things getting out is from author Byron Priest, who was putting together a book about the Beach Boys at that time and had access to these tapes, and the tapes came out from there. So a lot of people call the first Smile bootleg the Priest tape. Fast forward a couple more years, we get the first release on vinyl, which had the Brother Records logo. And instead of looking like this, it had a big, the big happy grin up top for the, actually, I think it was kind of close to that one. It was up here for the Smile logo. And that was the first time this thing was on vinyl as a bootleg. In 1985, it was reissued again, but with the song Wonderful for the first time. In 1987, its first CD release. And in 1988, probably the most, important one in the bunch so far, the Mark Lynette mixes. These were done in-house for Capitol with the idea of a potential Smile thing at some point. Obviously, it didn't come till much later in 1993 with the Good Vibrations box set. When that box set came out, so much original Smile music was officially released for the very first time. So if you were there in 1993, hearing this stuff fresh and new, from the original tapes must have been so exciting. It's still exciting now putting it on. Which brings us to 1997 with Sea of Tunes putting out the most incredible body of work, like pretty much everything ever recorded by the Beach Boys. It's insane. This particular record came out in 2003, and from what I can read from various sources, Sea of Tunes was done by this point. And so the name is on the back, but no one's really sure if this was really put out by them. And more than likely only released in England, as this one does say made in the UK in the back, and they may have been imported to America and different countries, but there's some mystery with this release, whether or not it's actually Sea of Tunes or just using the CDs and the quality stuff that was around at that time to make this thing kind of influenced by Sea of Tunes. Whatever the case may be, this makes for a fascinating listen. There's alternate takes on here that you don't get in too many other places, and it's a lot of fun to listen to. It's definitely someone's vision of what Smile could have been. It's not like the complete thing that Brian would eventually put out with Brian Wilson Presents Smile in 2004, but for something that wasn't finished and to have some idea of how it could have gone, it's always fascinating to see what people can do with this thing. To this day, people still mess around with it because it wasn't finished, and there is so much more it could have been. So the closest thing we got was Present Smile in 2004, but this thing is really, really cool. And, it's got the tracks on here with information about where these songs came from, which is very helpful. For instance, the album opens up with Prayer. It's not called Our Prayer, but just Prayer. And this is the version from the 2020 album. It doesn't have the G outro, which is interesting. Heroes and Villains follows that up next, and this is the February 10th, 1967 version, according to the notes back here. Barnyard follows that up with no lead vocals, just an instrumental thing. I feel like the tape source on this one's a bit fuzzier. It may have been from a different boot that they sourced this one from. It's a little fuzzier, but really fun to hear it, just instrumental. Do You Like Worms comes up after this one. And it's a stereo mix from a few different sources, and I really like how there's just a bunch of random studio chatter throughout this entire song. You kind of get a fly-in-the-wall feel for this one, which is really cool to listen to. It doesn't go into the bicycle rider part, but Old Master Painter follows this up, and this one actually mentions that Denny did a lead vocal for it, but it's been lost to time. This track has remained unreleased so far. Kind of cool. He Gives Speeches, it's the song that became She's Going Bald. This one, specifically on this record, they say that it blends really well into Wonderful. I can kind of see that. The version of Wonderful on this record truly is wonderful. It's a lot different than what I've heard before on different boots. Different background vocals, a different lead vocal, It's incomplete for sure, but it's such a groove, and I love this song anyway, but hearing a different take on this thing really sheds more light into the creative process of just how much composition went into these tracks, how many vocal takes went into these tracks. The guys really worked hard on this one, vocally, of course, and of course the Wrecking Crew with Brian, but this is one of those tracks that if you do have a chance to pick this thing up, Wonderful is one of those great songs. Child is the Father of the Man follows this one up, and this is a pretty unique mix as well. Its piano intro is layered with vocals. It's just a beautiful intro, followed by a musical piece that's pretty bass heavy before falling into the refrain that we all know. Cabin Essence is from 2020. Look is the last song on side one. It's just one of the most incredible pieces of work that Brian ever put together. Musically, it's got a lot of that Child is the Father of the Man bit, followed by a little bit of Good Vibrations, then Wonderful, then again back into Child is the Father of the Man. It's just an incredible piece of work. So yeah, Look is one of those songs that's just like, man, it's so good. Good Vibrations on this one is a different take. I mean, we've heard every version of Good Vibrations at this point, but this one's cool. It's mostly instrumental with some ad-libs from Brian and the guys, especially when the chorus comes in. They do that fuzz bass bit in the final stretch. It's really good. I Want to Be Around is just the music. It's instrumental. They do the workshop bit in the second half, which is nice. Vegetables comes from the 1993 box set. This version of Wind Chimes is kind of a combination of versions. So for instance, this one specifically says, unlike on the 1993 box set, the first two sections presented here are in stereo, while the piano tag is in mono. Mrs. O'Leary's Cow, or Fire, whatever you want to call it, this thing just sounds menacing. You hear like the scraping on the strings. It's absolutely terrifying. It's one of those songs you just don't forget. And I love its placement here. I love to say Dada. It's got that cool, cool water intro. And then you get You're Welcome, which wasn't part of Smile at all, but it's kind of nice to have it here. They probably put it here because it's from the period. It's something different you're not going to see normally. So I get why it's here, but it wasn't meant to be here. The version of Surf's Up that closes off the album is also from the 1993 Good Vibrations box set. It's made up of versions of the song done throughout the end of 1966. So it's a pretty faithful version to what was kind of in Brian's mind at that time as far as where the song could go early on in the process. So here's what the record looks like. Simple black and white label with Sea of Tunes LP001 written on it. And here's a better look at the back cover. So without question, this thing for me personally is a 10 out of 10 because the lore behind Smile is just as impressive as the music itself. The story behind Smile is one that will always be debated, always be chatted about. Everyone thinks they know what happened with Smile falling apart or, ending or however you want to put it. The music that they made was something so intricate, so ahead of its time, so forward-thinking and progressive. It's kind of amazing that people can put these things together and try to figure out where Brian was going with these things. For the most part, Smile was like more than half finished, I would say. They were definitely missing a lot of vocal parts, lyrics, and then putting the rest of the pieces together just wasn't there. So eventually in 2004, it was finished. But at this time, it was kind of the Wild West of like, what could this album have been or become? Smile bootlegs are a lot of fun to collect because you get an idea of where someone thinks the album could have gone. And to this day, they still continue. Everyone still makes Smile mixes to see like how the story could have been pieced together, what the story was, what it's trying to tell. So for me, I feel like the fans have always kept Smile alive and well. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun to put on and just dive into and hear these different mixes all in one place. And to have it on vinyl just looks so sharp. Like, this would have looked so good on the shelf in 1967. Like, it just would have popped off. People would have saw that and like been like, yep, I'm bringing that home with me. So another what if in the Beach Boys discography. But yeah, my name is Giggens. This has been the Beach Boys Smile on Sea of Tunes LP001. What are your thoughts on this album or this version? If you have this version, let me know. We'll chat about it in the comments below. But thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.